Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name's Quincy Hensel. I'm the CEO at the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. We want to thank you so much for joining us today for our final virtual Kegs and Issues of the season. So we've never done an event in the summer months, but we felt that if any topic would draw a crowd, it would be beer. So we are really glad to have you here. We have an awesome speaker. We have Sean Sullivan joining us this evening from the Maine Brewers Guild. Who better to talk to all of us about beer? Before we get to the presentation, I do want to take a minute and thank our sponsors of this program. We have amazing supporters of all of our events. Kegs and Issues is no different. And so I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank those who make this possible every single quarter. So I'll start with our fabulous presenting sponsors. We have Baker Newman Noise, WEX, and Consolidated Communications. And tonight's featured sponsor is Seaport Credit Union. Now, usually the first round of drinks would be on Seaport. I know we're all joining from the comfort of our own home, so I hope you brought a drink along with you to kick off tonight's conversation. Our cooperating sponsors of Kegs and Issues are Modern Woodman, Moody's Collision Center, Mindful Employer, and Maine Mortgage Solutions. Our reception sponsors are Portland Beer Hub, the Maine Brew Bus, Vacation Land Distributors, and the Little Tap House. I also want to take a minute to recognize all of our craft brewery, distillery, and winery members. This list has been growing steadily, and without them, we just would not be the cool brewery and distillery scene that we have become. So thank you for all of you and your partnership on this program. Our media partners of Kegs and Issues are Town Square Media, Maine Magazine, WCSH News Center Maine, and Maine Biz. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank the Portland Regional Chamber's special community sponsors who they support everything that we do throughout the year. And we have 5 of them. They are Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Spectrum Healthcare, the University of Southern Maine, Southern Maine Community College, and our newest special community partner, MEMIC. Also, a huge shout out to Aura. We miss you guys. We cannot wait to be back in person, and we hope to see you maybe even in the fall. So if you're watching, love you guys, and we will see you soon. And now I would like to take a moment and turn the screen over to tonight's featured presenting sponsor, which is Seaport Credit Union. And with us tonight from Seaport is their CEO, Gene Ardito.
Thanks, Quincy, and cheers, everyone. As one of the first sponsors of Kegs and Issues, I just want to take a minute to tell you a bit about Seaport Credit Union. We are Maine's fastest growing credit union, and we're focused on 3 things. 1, providing the best financial experience to our members. 2, attracting and retaining the best employees with a culture of growth and success. And 3, investing our talent and resources in the communities in which we live and work. With respect to our commitment to our communities, I'd like you to view a quick video about a program we started in 2008 at Riverton Elementary School here in Portland. And our program has grown since to include schools in Portland, Scarborough, and Augusta. So on behalf of our 85 employees from our 5 branches, thank you for viewing. So Andrea, please roll the video.
Seaport Credit Union is proud to provide a unique opportunity for elementary and intermediate school students through our scholarship program. The Seaport Scholarship Program takes an innovative approach to learning by encouraging college aspirations in students at an early age.
The first time that I saw the Seaport Scholarship Program was at Reiki School a few years ago, and I walked into the meeting space and the room was filled with kids wearing brightly colored t-shirts that Seaport had brought for them, and everyone was so excited. I really can't tell you who among those audience groups was more excited.
In 2019, 900 students attended college workshops, wrote essays, and over 120 students were awarded college scholarships in school ceremonies celebrating the dreams and aspirations of the program participants and scholarship recipients. Since the program began in Portland in 2008, Students have written nearly 8,000 essays, and Seaport has awarded over $86,000 of college scholarships. The program has since grown to now run in schools throughout Portland, Augusta, and Scarborough. Each spring, Seaport employees enjoy supporting our public schools by reading the essay submissions and participating in the scholarship ceremonies.
In the Portland Public Schools, we like to think that our job is to have our students leave prepared and empowered. Nothing gets students thinking about that next step, about that plan, more than the partnership that we have with Seaport.
We have terrific employees who love to give back to the community. Our college scholarship program for elementary school students is an innovative, meaningful, and fun way for us to support our public schools.
Seaport had created an environment where kids were thinking about the pathway to college when they're only in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. So it was really just amazing.
It helps our students at a very early age, long before most other students are really thinking about what is it that I'm going to do at the next level. It helps them to think about college. I think it's just absolutely fabulous.
That was excellent. Jean, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your support. Thank you for sharing that video. I hope that we can see students back in school like that sometime soon. Such a bizarre picture from over the last 5 months, isn't it? But Seaport, such an incredible partner of the Chamber, and they do such great work in the community. And we're so proud to partner with you on Kegs and Issues and have you with us this evening as our presenting sponsor. So thank you again.
Thanks, Quincy.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, the Executive Director of the Maine Brewers Guild, Sean Sullivan. Now, Sean is serving in his 6th year as Executive Director of the Guild, which is the trade association for Maine beer brewers. Sean does really incredible work uniting our growing cast of local brewers in our state and has really played a pivotal role in building our world-renowned reputation for Maine craft beer. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that before his time at the Guild, Sean started Bowie Local, which is a company that many of you maybe have heard of. It's a local gift card company. We at the Chamber are very familiar with Bowie Local, and he actually received the Portland Chamber's Entreverge Award for his stellar business accomplishment. So again, Sean, congratulations for that award. Just wanted to do that shout out to our viewers. And with that, Sean, I'd love to thank you for joining us. And I'm going to turn it over to Sean for a few minutes. He'd love to do like a deep dive update on all things happening around craft beer in Maine. And then as time allows at the end, we do want to open it up to some Q&A. So Sean, the floor is yours.
Quincy, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Jean. Thank you for the support. Whether it's Bowie Local back in the day with Chris Hall and the Chamber's support, or Russell Voss, who was leading the Chamber's Young program and now is a brewery owner. First things first, I hope you guys will join me and grab a beer. We're going to be talking beer. I'm going to share some slides. And if I'm successful at the end of this, none of you will ever ask me again if this is a bubble and if I'm worried about market saturation. So give me a second here to share my screen. I'm going to hop into the slides here and shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. Okay, here we go. So let's talk about where we've come from and where we are today. In 2015 in Maine, we had about 66 breweries. There were still 6 poor counties in Maine without a brewery just 5 years ago, but Maine breweries were already employing over 1,600 people. And a little under 10% of beer consumed in Maine was Maine craft beer. That was below the national average of about 12%. And that's on a volume basis, which most of these slides will be on. February 2020, pre-COVID days here, we had about 150 breweries in Maine. Every single county in Maine not only has one brewery, but has 2 breweries or more. And Maine breweries were employing about 2,050 people, and Maine craft beer market share is about 13.1% here in the state, which now is up to par with the national average. As you can see breweries around the country have been growing as well. But let's dig into those numbers a little bit more. First things first, a lot of people ask me, when's a good time to reach out to brewers? When should I knock on their door, give them a call, try and get them on the phone? The short answer is not in July and August. This slide uses data from the state. Brewers pay excise taxes when they brew the beer. So each month they report out how much beer they brewed to the state. And that's where I got this data to produce this chart. You can see February is the slowest month of the year for production. July and August is the biggest month. And you can also see, if you look at 2013 versus 2018, I'm sorry to use 2018 numbers, but it's the most recent full year of data that we have. But you can see the production has really gone up. And so speaking of production, this chart shows the growth of Maine's brewers in volume of beer produced. These are gallons sold. For those of you who have heard about barrels of beer, a barrel of beer is 31 gallons of beer. So while the number of breweries in Maine has doubled since 2015, the volume of beer produced has not. And that's okay, because this relates to a broader national consumer preference of quality over quantity. That's kind of a fundamental tenet of craft beer. And many of you might have been picking up 30 packs for a weekend at the lake 5 years ago, and today are grabbing a variety of 4 packs, and you're not alone. It's also important to note that this graph doesn't show beer that's brewed in Maine and sold out of state. So this is just beer brewed and sold in state, but putting that into more context. This chart looks at all the beer sold in Maine in each year in gallons. So the red gallons, total amount of beer sold in Maine. The blue gallons are the total amount of beer brewed in Maine and sold in Maine. So it starts to explore the market share. The most common question I get is, can Maine really support this many breweries? Is this a bubble? The reality is that Maine's craft beer market share is still very small. So if you look at 2018, however, you can see, and back to 2009, Maine Brewers market share is continuing to grow. And to put this into perspective, the lowest bar here is 1 million gallons. And the average brewer in Maine, or rather the median sized brewer in Maine, brews about 7,000 gallons of beer. So I'm going to do one more to contextualize this. This chart aims to put in perspective just how much more room there is to grow. I added some trend lines to these graphs. Again, this chart shows all the beer brewed in Maine. Sorry, excuse me. This chart shows 2 things. It shows all the beer brewed and sold in Maine in blue, and all of Anheuser-Busch's gallonage sold in Maine. I think people are often shocked to hear when I tell them that there's more Bud Light, and Busch and so on sold in Maine collectively than there is all Maine craft beer combined. But while Maine brewers are growing, that growth has come not because more beer is being consumed. In fact, overall beer consumption is down, but that gets back to that quality over quantity. So Maine brewers are really aggressively eroding market share from big beer. But of course, there are a lot more breweries, and that means a lot more competition. And there's a lot of competition even to be your local beer of choice. Some of you probably live in towns now where there was no brewery, then there was one brewery, and now maybe there are 3, 4, 5 breweries in your town. So I looked at how many people, a COA, a certificate of approval holder, so that's an entity licensed to sell beer. A brewery is a COA, as it's referred to in the industry, but an importer, which might sell 200 different beers into a bar or bottle shop, or try to sell them, they're also a single certificate of approval holder, COA, as well as wholesalers. So I think the easiest way to think about a COA is a beer seller. What this chart shows is that there are a lot of people trying to sell beer in Maine, and that number continues to grow up. There's been a steady increase. However, Maine brewers have really held strong and increased their proportion of market representation since 2009. People are choosing to drink local, and the collaboration that's got us here is really a key theme, and it's been buoyed by these community members who have maybe not explored craft beer, but then chose to support a brewery that opened up in their hometown. And what this shows is that in 2009, Maine beer sellers represented about 37% of the market, but in 2019, that percentage is about 56. So even though we're getting new competitors coming into our state trying to sell beer, the Maine brewers are still selling a lot of beer and holding their ground. If you think about that from another way, with the increase in people selling beer, are they all selling a lot less beer? Well, no, consumers are spreading the love around. One of the tenets here is this quality over quantity. And don't get me wrong, there's no shame in growing your business, increasing your production capabilities, leveraging the economies of scale. But with the exponential growth of the number of breweries in Maine, the USA, over the past 10 years, I wanted to explore, how it is to be someone selling beer. And the truth is, Maine is attracting more thirsty visitors. And so the average beer seller is selling about the same amount of beer that they were selling in 2009. This could be a bad look in another world, but I'm choosing to look at it as kind of a beautiful example of a natural balance of a marketplace in a pure economic sense. And it's another reason why I'm not as worried about a bubble, but I do expect, and we have seen, I think we'll continue to see, new and existing breweries stay at a relatively small scale of production. The other thing that really has generated a lot of pride, I think, in this state, and something I feel really great about, Maine, we all have heard the expression of two Maines, but really the craft beer industry growth in the state is not just a rural or urban phenomenon. And in fact, the impact that people choosing to drink local beer and these entrepreneurs choosing to open up businesses in their hometowns, the net effect is a really positive economic impact. So as I mentioned before, in Maine, we now have 2 or more breweries in every one of our 16 counties, and there are dozens of main streets and downtowns feeling that positive economic development, which is often kickstarted by a brewery opening up their doors on a mostly vacant main street, leading to more foot traffic and other businesses opening up in town. It's also really incredible to look back 20 years ago and see that there were only 12 breweries in Maine and only about 6 of our counties had a brewery at all. So I know, well, before I get there, I think it's important to say that the impacts go beyond beer. And the other thing that I hear a lot from people is how welcoming breweries are. And the tasting room model, which allows people to kind of see the product being made, meet the people behind it, has been really powerful. It's also helped Maine build on its heritage of kind of quality products made here by, salt of the earth people. And tourists have taken note. So in 2017, about 20% of overnight tourists to Maine visited a brewery. That a huge leap happened in the past few years. And in 2019, 39% of overnight tourists visited a brewery. That is pretty incredible to me. And I hear from people all the time, and I love hearing it about their friends or family members who live out of state, but said they want to come to Maine to visit the breweries. And part of this too is really this changing drinking culture around beer. If you've ever spent time in Europe, you know that oftentimes on a Sunday, you have the whole kind of village will go down to the neighborhood pub. The goal isn't to just sit around and drink alcohol all day. The goal is to connect with community members, to have a kind of third space, gathering space, and kind of have a daylight experience is the way I've been phrasing it lately. Craft breweries, Maine breweries, they're really doing that. And, the nonprofit meeting in the brewery or just, having people there, even if they're not drinking beer, they feel welcome. The other thing which you may have heard about is the agricultural impacts. Maine potato farmers always planted barley as a rotational crop because barley plants nutrients into the soil, barley being the key ingredient in beer. We now have a huge amount of acreage under production in Aroostook County of barley, which is being grown to a higher standard that allows it to be used by brewers. But first it has to go through a malting process, which is kind of a kilning process, a toasting process, if you will. And we have multi-million-dollar malt houses that have opened up in the past number of years, both in Aroostook County as well as over in Lisbon, Maine, as well as hop farms all over the state and grain processors who are now serving our industry too. So Maine brewers are taking note of that, and about 90% of them used some Maine grown or processed ingredients in 2019, and 68% of that 90% said they're going to use more in 2020. We continue to see that. Allagash has their 16 counties. I'm drinking a beer from Foundation Brewing right now, which mentions they're using Maine ingredients. And that sort of commitment to local is not only interesting to beer drinkers, but also part of the value system that I think has long been associated with this kind of back to land movement and other aspects of Maine's kind of heritage and brand. And it's attracting more people here to visit and stay and work here. But I know COVID is on everyone's mind, so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what's going on in that regard. The National Trade Group for Craft Beer Brewers is the Brewers Association. They found an average of a 43% drop in revenue. I'd say that is accurate for Maine, potentially even a little bit more in Maine this time of year, given the reliance on tourists. We did survey brewers in early April. What we found is that 650 people of that kind of just over 2,000 had been furloughed or laid off. This was the biggest one, where the biggest breweries represent a substantial portion of that number, particularly those who have brew pubs where they have a huge number of wait staff and others. But the good news is, as restaurants have started to reopen, about 250 of those people have been hired or rehired. We have seen a couple of closures. Nuts and Bolts Brewing in Biddeford closes at the end of this month. Andrews Brewing Company in Lincolnville, a brewery that had been around since the mid-90s. Both said COVID wasn't necessarily the reason that they're closing, but kind of the final straw on their back. But where there's closures, there are also openings. And to open up a brewery often takes well over a year to go through all the permitting process and funding and so on. And Outland Farm Brewery in Pittsfield opened in May. Trinken Brewing, that's the German word for drinking is my understanding, in West Bath opened in March. Bath Ale Works, this is different than Bath Brewing, is going to be opening up in Wiscasset in fall, winter 2020. That's opened by a guy who was literally a NASA engineer who had been born in Maine, always wanted to come back and was attracted to the beer scene. So now is, as a retirement project, is starting that brewery. And I know the folks of Belfast are happy to hear, I'm happy to hear that Marshall Wharf Brewing is coming back fall, winter of this year under new ownership, which is great. So looking back to look ahead here, this picture is a picture of a bar in Rome, of course, modern day Rome, but it's an ancient Roman bar. And I brought this up because I was listening to a podcast by National Geographic, and it was a woman who studies graffiti in Pompeii, which was all preserved when, around whatever it was, year 19 or so, when Vesuvius erupted. And one of the pieces of graffiti said something along the lines of, "Don't drink the wine here, it's watered down, go to the place down the street, it's better." So it's kind of the original Yelp review on the wall of Pompeii, which is all a long way of saying that people have been drinking beer, drinking wine, getting together to have a drink for at least 2,000 years. Pandemic or not, people are still purchasing beer. And while a lot of those sales have shifted to grocery stores and convenience stores and less so out of tasting rooms, Maine brewers are still selling beer, they're still brewing beer, and pandemic or not, beer will be here on the other side. And a bit tongue in cheek, but with only 13% market share thus far, we still have 80% of the market left to grow into. So, as we look to the future, our ingredients for success will really remain the same as we move ahead. And, those ingredients, collaboration, I mean, you guys have heard it. I can tell you, talking to other guild leaders around the country, that Maine really does this to the kind of nth degree, speaking to our kind of neighborly mantra in our state. social engagement, obviously a hot topic these days. We're seeing a lot of beers being brewed for social causes and breweries taking a stand. Black is Beautiful is one that was a national project where breweries brew a beer to a certain recipe and donate a portion of proceeds to organizations who are working to fight systemic racism. Altogether was a beer brewed in the early parts of pandemic that supported hospitality workers. Foundation just told me they're brewing People Power, which will support the ACLU. Some of you may have had Woods and Waters by Maine Beer Company to commemorate the national monument and work towards their goal of 1% for the planet. Maine Island Trail Ale, one of my favorites from Rising Tide. I mentioned tourism and talent. You know, beer is creating a new reason to visit here, and people are, especially with remote workers, I think there's a great brand that we're helping to build that's attracting a new demographic. And international opportunities. Some of you may know about the Maine Beer Box. We're continuing to explore international opportunities, working with Maine International Trade Center, local rep from the Export-Import Bank of the United States, the Department of Commerce, I'm Skip, the DECD, and others. The other thing that I think is interesting is with Maine's ability to grow grains, process grains, grow hops, we even have a professional yeast lab at our university as well as a private one. We really have a chance to create a truly local beer. So if the beer industry heads towards what the wine industry has settled into, which is a kind of a terroir focus, you know, a beer with a connection to the land, we are very well positioned. And, you know, but we're continuing to build this ecosystem. And I'm sure there are people on this call, and I just want to say, you know, the ecosystem that we've all worked together to build. I'm not talking about the guild or our brewers. I'm just talking about all of the bankers, the lawyers, the credit unions, the banks, the you know, you name it, the glassware providers, the tour operators, everybody in between. We have built an incredible and robust ecosystem that's also complemented by a lot of public and private partnerships as well. And we're going to continue to do that. So we're also making a few pivots. And, you know, we're not able to have our big beer festival, but we are hosting an event this weekend called Maine Beer Night, which will offer a whole playlist of videos and kind of a community event where our brewers have shared something educational or a celebration or otherwise with folks for the evening, partnering with the new alcohol delivery service, Car Hop. And a lot of people are getting beer delivered these days, which is interesting too. We've relaunched our Maine Beer Trail that rewards people for visiting breweries. No longer do we have paper brochures. Now it's all on the app, and we're collecting data, which will inform our brewers about who is coming to their tasting rooms. And that video on the right there, that's Jen Tibbetts from Tattooed Dad Brewing, who's one of our Maine Beer Night videos. And so we're looking at pivots as well as we think as an organization and industry, what the future might look like. So I will stop there. Thank you for having me. Cheers to all of you. You have all been a part of this success. And while we have a bump in the road here, beer will be here in the future, so fear not.
Sean, that was excellent. Thank you so much. There's like so much intel and information in there. I would love nothing more than just to hang out and like pontificate with you on so many of those data points. But I think, you know, one of the last things you said around how like the beer industry, it has become this ecosystem in Maine. It's not just the nearly 200 breweries. It is the law firms and the accounting firms and all of the vendors and just everyone who touches that industry. It plays a really critical role in our community and in our economy. So I think what you were showing us is, sorry, if you wanted to comment on that, go ahead.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think, you know, we sat down about 5 years ago and kind of thought about what we wanted. We want to be the top destination in the United States for craft beer tourists. But as we thought more through that, we also wanted to be a hub of expertise. And that really, you know, relates to what you're saying. It's not just about making great beer and having people come here and drinking great beer. It's also building up that ecosystem and being a powerhouse where people come to you because they know in Maine, they know how to do it right. And it really is due to the work of a lot of people in a lot of sectors who have spent time to really understand our industry, our brewers' needs, and help them grow.
Definitely, definitely. And I know we're short on time. We're coming up, or we're at 4:30. So I don't want to keep people, although I'm now thinking that this conversation was way too short and we're going to have you come back. But one thing I want to mention, you touched on the great pivot. COVID, the pandemic, it has impacted everybody. And it's summer. It makes it a little easier for us to be out and about and to visit some of our favorite restaurants and breweries. But, fall will come, winter will come. We're not sure where we're going to be with the pandemic. I know some of our local breweries have just done an amazing job. We had Rob Todd on last month for Kegs talking about how Allagash has pivoted. I know I have visited Rising Tide, which is my drink of choice this evening. They have done an amazing job making it very COVID safe. But I don't know if you want to take just a minute to make sure our viewers know that breweries are trying to be open. They are trying to sell their goods, and we need to be there to continue to support them always, but particularly right now.
Yeah, thank you. So a few quick thoughts on that. One, I think something that's awesome to see is beer gardens. I mean, you think of beer gardens, you think of Europe, but there is a beautiful culture being developed around beer gardens. So at least while it's still nice outside, I encourage people to check it out. The great news is, to make beer, you have to run literally a sanitized facility. So brewers are well accustomed to not just cleaning, but cleaning to the point where there's not a modicum of bacteria. Otherwise, the beer is going to get infected. So rest assured that brewers understand how to keep things clean. And, as we move ahead, there's going to be some new opportunities as well. With fewer people coming through, brewers can explore and experiment a little bit more on beer styles that take a little bit longer to brew. So some interesting brews coming out. And, there are some new opportunities to get beer regardless of your level of comfort. So from going into a tasting room all the way down to literally having someone in a mask and wearing gloves, dropping it off on your doorstep. We keep a list of breweries, curbside and pickup options on our website. So I encourage people to check that out and appreciate all the support that a lot of people are continuing to offer their local breweries and making that extra trip.
That's a great point to end on, is that the breweries have really gone above and beyond to make sure that they can be open, to make sure Mainers do not go thirsty during this pandemic. And you could go to a beer garden, or you could have beer dropped off at your house. So there's so many ways to make sure that you're still able to get your favorite brews, even while we may still be needing to be a little social distance. So with that, Sean, I want to thank you so much. I'd love to raise a toast to you, my friend. Cheers.
Hey, thank you. Cheers.
And thanks to everyone who joined us tonight. I think your message is, even in these really difficult times, is really positive, and it is clear that our brew scene is still on the uptick. So I'm really excited to see what is to come. Please don't be a stranger. Let us know how we can help. And definitely, I know you have your big event on Saturday night. So I don't know if tickets are still available, but if they are, I'm assuming people can go to your website.
Yep, you can check out mainbeernight.com is the easiest way to get more information, and you can sign up $5 to get the link and join us, grab some beers, and join us for an evening.
That is awesome. I'm going to join you on Saturday as well. So with that, my friend, thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody who joined us. Enjoy your summer, and we will see everybody back at Kegs, virtual or in person, still yet to be decided, but we'll see you in September.